A Canadian citizen who allegedly narrated violent propaganda videos for the Islamic State group has been charged in the United States. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, Saudi-born Mohammed Khalifa is the one accused of being the voice behind the violence, providing English narration on around 15 videos. Khalifa left Canada to join the Islamic State in Syria, where the U.S. Justice Department says he became a key member of the group's propaganda campaign.
Yeah, key member because ISIS, if you recall, was masterful at recruiting young people from the United States, Canada, Europe with specific skill sets and would employ them based on their specific skill sets. And in this case, this guy spoke perfect English. And I remember reporting on ISIS in 2014, 15, when these young people would be, just so drawn by the lure of this terror organization and would make the trip over. Some of them wouldn't even make it over there, but it was this do it yourself terror organization. It was like joining the Boy Scouts of a terror group. And this particular individual was a Canadian citizen, probably sitting behind his laptop and living in a very ordinary life when he was lured over to go fight alongside ISIS. He goes to Syria and he does this very important propaganda work. The narration of these videos, if you recall, the videos were recruitment videos to bring more people over using, rap songs and all kinds of, painting this utopia of a life that they would have if they come fight alongside ISIS in Syria and Iraq. And unfortunately, so many of these young people made the trip over. And now, one by one, we're hearing of their stories when they are being brought to justice. But this guy it's a very symbolic member of ISIS, somebody who was very integral in making these propaganda videos and helping them out with the English translation. We know there's editors and writers and people who knew how to use, video equipment and social media. And that's what made them such a savvy terror organization.
A bomb blast just outside of a mosque in Kabul killed at least 5 Afghan civilians, Lisa, and injured at least 4 others. Now, I wonder what happens in a country run by a terrorist regime when there's a terrorist attack. Is this just par for the course?
Right. Yeah. Great question. We used to hear a lot more about these terror attacks in Afghanistan when there actually was a president and the Taliban was just lurking overhead and terrorizing people on a day-to-day basis. And now this is, only the second, I should say only, but this is the second such attack since the Taliban took over fully in August. And if you recall, it was just last month where there was a very large attack at the Kabul airport in which over 200 people were killed, including 13 American servicemen and women. So this is actually, in terms of their pacing, it's not too bad, right? We used to hear much more about these terror attacks, but I think what they're trying to do is set the stage. The Taliban promised us a new and improved look, something that would be much more moderate and milder than the terror organization that they were in the 90s and over the last 20 years. But we're seeing that they are actually putting down that they are putting down their swords and kind of showing us what they're all about in the sense that they are calling their territory and with women staying home and the attacks that are made on all sorts of different minority groups, and then now this, of course, this attack is showing that they're still in charge, and people should stay at home and adhere to what the Taliban say.
Yeah, let's talk about that for just a moment here. Thousands of Afghan girls stuck at home wondering if the new Taliban administration will reopen the secondary schools for girls. Lisa, the boys were allowed back in classes about the 6th grade, but not for the girls. Like you said, I thought the Taliban said they were going to change.
Right, exactly. And then who's believing that, right? The Taliban actually came out with the most bogus statement saying that it's not that we don't want girls to be educated, it's that we haven't trained our own Taliban fighters on how to respect women. So we don't want there to be any incidents. Um, that is such a sad statement to make. I mean, talk about lame excuses, right? They're afraid that their Taliban fighters are going to attack these women and sexually, of course, and violate them in ways that they are admitting themselves, which makes it extremely sad. But think about these young girls who are used to 20 years. I mean, obviously they're all under the age of 20, so in their lifespan, they would go to school, they'd aspire to become doctors and lawyers and engineers and astronauts and all sorts of things. And now all of a sudden they're being told to stay home while their brothers and cousins that are male go to school. So it's a very tough period of time. I hope that this is just a transition and that Afghan people, I know that there are many activists that are fighting for this, but that they can bring light to the fact that women have to go to school. These young girls have to go to school, and that's the future of a country that's being hijacked.
Kabul may be facing an electricity blackout, Lisa, and as the Taliban is failing to pay their bills. And that's not good news as we head closer to winter. We could be seeing a serious humanitarian disaster in that area very soon.
Yeah, talk about deadbeat tenants. The Taliban have not paid their bills, and they continue to be in this downward spiral economically. And we're getting warnings all over the place about how there will be a humanitarian crisis with regard to food, with regard to supply, with regard to their banking system, with regard to electricity, and everything else. It is just in complete chaos. And as you know, people are told to stay home. They're told to conserve energy. They're told to conserve everything because they don't know what their future holds. But they have Central Asian collectors here that own and operate their electrical lines, and they haven't paid their bills. And who knows how much longer they will have electricity. But all in all, pure chaos. We'll see how this all turns out.
Yeah, no kidding. The Jerusalem Post is reporting that longtime foes Saudi Arabia and Iran, who severed ties in 2016, began talking again. Now, Lisa, this comes at a time when Washington and Tehran were discussing reviving the nuclear pact.
Yeah, this is very important news because we're talking about the Sunni and Shiite head honchos of the region of the Middle East, who are, longtime enemies, uh, come and sit down together. And we believe this is just speculation that they met on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Now, picture this, Hal. The United States brings all these leaders, rogue and otherwise, to New York once a year in September, and it's basically behind the US's back that they're meeting, right? Because the Iranians are trying to strike a deal with the US with regard to the Iran nuclear deal, and we obviously are, giving weapons and other supplies to Saudi Arabia, so we have a relationship with them. And here we are, we have breaking news that we weren't told of this, but last month the two met for the first time, and they will hopefully, in their own words, meet again to continue the conversation. So it is quite an event to be told, and we'll see where this takes us. But I think this will stir reaction out of the White House because they are really jonesing for a deal with the Iranian regime, and now if they see that the Saudis are getting close to the Iranian regime, they will also want to be part of that deal. And we'll see. We'll see where this goes. But it is very important news.
Lisa, Algeria has accused its former colonial ruler France of genocide. Algerian officials recalled their ambassador to Paris over comments by French President Macron it described as inadmissible. What exactly did Macron say?
Macron said nothing except the fact that he will try to slow the pace of visas given to those coming from Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. Now, remember how France went through a period of time where they opened their doors to anyone and everyone who was trying to get in. What they did was they let in a whole bunch of bad actors, and they had years of very large scale and deadly, deadly terror attacks. And many of those individuals were from Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria. So now they want to slow the flow of migrants coming into the country. Now, remember, France has had such a buyer's remorse over this very lax immigration policy that they are actually calling upon the United States to be much more careful at our southern border in letting in people who are not vetted. So they're basically saying, look at us, look how badly this turned out for us. Don't repeat our mistakes, because they do have buyer's remorse. And that's exactly right. So in France, in the UK, you have areas that are completely taken over by these groups. And it's not that, obviously these are melting pots, that's certain, but these are groups that are not willing to cooperate with law enforcement. They're not willing to send their children to regular schools. They want to enforce Sharia law in many cases in these areas. And obviously, most importantly, they're not fully vetted. So we don't know who these individuals are and if they are going to carry out another car ramming or stabbing or suicide bombing in one of the local areas in France or anywhere else in Europe. So that's why you have the reaction from Macron. And of course, Algeria took offense to it and said, hey, we were your mercenaries. We were fighting for you guys. So that's why they accused them of genocide. But I will remind you, this is not the first time that Algeria recalled their ambassador in France. They're just I don't know. They're offended again.
And Algeria has even banned French military planes as that diplomatic row continues to deepen. Now, speaking of planes, Lisa, Chinese planes we're seeing flying over Taiwan and the defense zone, and a second day of a show of force. Now, the U.S. is getting to be quite concerned over China's provocative military activity near Taiwan.
Yeah, it's these are crazy provocations when you look at them. Not too many people are paying attention to this. The fact that China is inching closer and closer to a full-on heated war between them and their neighbor Taiwan. Of course, the U.S. is showing some concern, but what does that really mean? We don't really have much leverage over the Chinese anymore. They do whatever they want, whether it's in Hong Kong, it's in the seas, or with Taiwan, or with trade, or with coronavirus. They have had a free pass at it all. So, of course, now when they are provoking Taiwan, I mean, who's going to do anything about it, right? We had the Uyghur situation. We didn't hear anything from human rights groups. We had Hong Kong, nothing from groups. They weren't being transparent about COVID, and everyone blamed it on Donald Trump instead of going after the Chinese and really getting to the bottom of where this virus came from and why the Chinese weren't being transparent. So, this is yet another notch on the belt of the Chinese who are, inching closer and closer. Obviously, these provocations are serious. We had 28 planes, I believe, or so on Friday and about 30 on Saturday. So it's continuing. Over the weekend, they did a real masterful job at, showing some force over the skies in Taiwan. So
Yeah.
we'll continue to look at that story at the foreign desk.
Yeah, China flexing its military muscles, absolutely. Lisa, the president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, said he's retiring from politics and his daughter will run for president in 2022. Some believe it's kind of a move meant to keep the power within the family.
Sure, it is. It absolutely is. It's also nice to say that he's, putting his daughter up. It's not a son. It's not, my second cousin first removed. It's a daughter. And in some ways, we are in the age where, this weekend we found out that Qatar had an election in which no women are going to be elected. Afghanistan just put in an all-male cabinet as well, just like the Iranian regime. When you have women in the place of power, it's a nice it's a nice move. And I think some people will look at this and criticize him for wanting to have a power grab, but again, she's not being appointed, she's going to be running. So it's the people's choice. If they want to keep her, they can get rid of her. But I found it to be a nice story for him to offer up his daughter, and we hope that she has the merit that she can be elected by her own qualifications and not the family name.
Well, she's got a good name behind her. With Duterte, it's kind of like here in Canada with Trudeau. People know the name Trudeau, so it was quite easy for her son to run, I guess. Now, Lisa, your state is dealing with one of the largest oil spills in California history. An underground pipeline leaked, spilling more than 126,000 gallons of oil into the Pacific Ocean, closing a number of beaches. Do we know how long the cleanup will take?
It's massive. They're calling this an ecological disaster. And they've closed the beaches. They said so far, I believe an official said last night that it's going to be weeks, and then they will reevaluate. So I imagine it'll be much longer. We're having a warm weather this week in the Southern California area. I think it's going to cool off a bit. So that will help, I guess, in their cleanup effort. People won't be flocking to those areas and even outside those areas. But these are major beach towns. I mean, Huntington Beach is the main area that was hit. Major beach town, and place where not only tourists but people who live there frequent the beach very often. And obviously we're looking at the wildlife that lives there, and obviously the ramifications are many. So we wish them well in this cleanup. It's massive. If you look, like you said, over 120,000 gallons.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I got a question here for you then. You got the oil spills, the wildfires, the earthquakes. Why do you live in California again? Oh, because it never rains in Southern California, right? Like the song says.
And then they complain that we need rain, we need rain. There's so much smog. We need rain. Why we live here, I really don't know. Honestly, I really don't know. We just had a recall that failed to get our governor out, who just is abysmal for this state in terms of homelessness and mismanagement of funds and everything else, and the closing of schools during COVID for a year and a half. So I don't know why people live here, but they keep coming. It's an interesting phenomenon.
And you do need some of that rain, absolutely, for the wildfires and to replenish your water supply.
Exactly.
Political reporter and our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, stay safe and thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure.